This is To Help You Heal, and I'm your host, Marie Monville. We are going to spend 10 minutes talking about healing. What kind of healing do you need? Is it in your mindset? Is it emotional healing? Is it spiritual healing? You know, there's a lot of healing that we all need, and this is where you're going to find it every week, 10 minutes on Tuesday. I'm so glad you're spending this time with me. So this week, I want to give you a little behind the scenes tour of my life. You know, for me, it's easy to forget that my life is so different than most people, or that my experiences are something that, thank goodness, most people don't endure. For me, my life is normal. What I've walked through is just a part of who I am. It's not the definition of who I am, but it's a part of my story. But it's easy for me to forget that not everybody knows that. And so as I was thinking about what to talk about this week, I thought, I want to go back to that place. I want to give a little history of my past. And in case you haven't ever heard my story before, I want to let you in on why I do what I do and where this comes from. Because each week when I come to you to share some bit of encouragement, hopefully you're getting some takeaways that are helping you find healing, helping you shift perspective for your life. The things that I share aren't just things that I read somewhere. It's not just stuff that I learned when I went to college a few years ago, but it's lived experience. And yeah, sometimes lived experience paired with education or research or whatever you want to call it. But this all comes from the place of what I know about life because of the parts of my story. And so I'm going to take you back a little bit. Maybe this is the first time you've heard my story, maybe not. And hopefully you're going to be able to get something out of it too, even if you're familiar with the context of where I'm coming from. But, when I was growing up, I was very shy, and I laugh about that now. The version of me that I thought I was back in my childhood years is nothing like and still like the version of me that I am today. I see, pieces of it, threads that are woven throughout all of my history, but I also see the shift in these places where I didn't look for enough inside of myself. I didn't have great aspirations for my life, largely because I didn't think that I had any significant capabilities, or, that I could do anything meaningful that somebody else couldn't do. And don't we all kind of put ourselves in that place sometimes? We just kind of think that everybody else is like us, like there's nothing special about us. And I've learned that that's not the truth. It's so much easier to see it for other people. We would never say that about anybody else, but it's easy to say that about ourselves. And so when I was going through school, I got great grades, but I didn't want to stand out because I didn't want the spotlight. And I was very reserved. I was not outgoing. I wouldn't have talked to people who didn't talk to me, that all that kind of thing. And when I graduated high school, the two goals that I had were really to become a wife and a mom. That's what I wanted for my life. And so I met my first husband, Charlie, when I was in high school. We got married after I graduated, and I thought, my life was going to be everything that I had ever planned. I always say that I had these hallmark expectations of life. Maybe you can relate. You want everything to go exactly the way you thought it would and have it all wrapped up neatly, even with commercial breaks, right? And yet that's not the reality of life. Although it's easy to think that that's reality and to think that everybody else's life is like that and that we're the only ones that's not. But I think the truth is, I don't think life just goes the way we planned. And a lot of times that can feel disappointing, but the truth is that there's just these twists and turns, and that's what makes life so beautiful. So, we have these two truths: that life doesn't go the way we want, but also that different is good, and that it shows us things that we couldn't have ever seen otherwise. And for me, in this place of my faith, I believe that that difference maker is God, that He is the one that is weaving our lives together and doing extraordinary things, even in the most painful moments of our life. My first husband, Charlie, and we found out that we were pregnant with our first daughter in our first year of marriage. I was just so excited. We were going to have a girl, and I just thought, what could be better? I was a wife, and now I was going to be a mom, and it really was the culmination of all the things that I wanted. But our daughter was born premature. She was born at 26 weeks of pregnancy, and so she died just 20 minutes later in our arms. And I remember that first night hearing the cries of the newborns down the hallway and thinking, God, why me? Why this? Why is this a part of my journey? And I would say that that became a season for me of really wrestling with God, of saying, God, why have you allowed this in my life when you know that since I was a little girl, all I wanted was to have my own family? Why is this the way it's gone? And at that time, I didn't realize how common it was for women to experience the loss of a child, whether, that be through miscarriage or stillbirth or just all of the different avenues that this sometimes happens. And so I felt very isolated in my pain. I mean, there were families at church and in our family and in our neighborhood, they were all having babies. And it was the reminder to me that my life was not like theirs. And the truth is that I met God in a really powerful way in that season, and he didn't leave me alone. He found me in my brokenness, and he encouraged my heart, and he spoke a promise to me that I would have another child. And the journey to get there, again, it didn't look like what I imagined, because on the backside of that promise from the Lord, I had another miscarriage. And the second time, it was an ectopic pregnancy. And so the doctors were saying to me that because of scar tissue, I probably had a 50-50 shot of getting pregnant. But, I knew that God had made me a promise. And so I was holding on to that. But at the same time, I was done trying. And I think that to me stands out in my mind. I was at this place of saying, okay, God, I'm not going to be the one to make this promise happen. I mean, I was exhausted from it, but I just kind of was putting it back to him saying, if this is the way it's going to be, then it's going to have to be from you because I just can't do this anymore. And about a month after I'd had that conversation with the Lord, that's when I found out that I was pregnant. And I knew this time, I knew this was the promise that God had spoken to me. And my daughter was born on her due date. My daughter, Abigail, she's almost, well, no, by the time you're listening to this, she will have celebrated her 25th birthday. And I look back at that whole experience, for me, it was one of the most profound and powerful moments where I knew God spoke to me. I heard his voice and I felt him tell me to name my daughter Abigail. And it all happened as he said. And so there was this completely different reality for me in that season of, walking with God. I mean, I had asked Jesus in my heart when I was a little girl. This whole aspect of relationship with him was not new to me, but it was new in this way of feeling this powerful connection where God actually speaks to me. And it put me on in this place of thinking, okay, well, if he spoke to me that day when he gave me this promise, then he must be speaking all the time and I want to hear him. I want to hear his voice. I want to feel him with me. I want to know what he knows. I want to have a friendship with God. And so as I think about, the journey of being a mom, I would have to say that I've learned so much about who God is and the way he loves us through this place of loving my kids and knowing how I care for them and how I would give my life for them and all of those things that are so true about, the way that we love our children. And yet we read in the Bible that God loves us more than that he loves us more than any parent could ever love their child. And so as much as I can discover about God's love for me, I know that I haven't even, hit a drop in the bucket yet, that there is more to discover. But I look at that season and I'm so grateful for the way that God answered that desire of my heart to know him more. Because for me, there was so much more coming in my life and so many other places where I was going to need to trust him. And if you are familiar with my story, you know that I'm alluding to the event in 2006 when my husband Charlie took the Amish schoolhouse hostage and killed some of the girls before he killed himself. And I'm not going to talk through all of that today. I mean, one of the things I always say about my podcast is that it's about 10 minutes. So I don't have time to get into that today, but I'm going to take you through that next week. But I want you to know that when you're listening to this, I'm speaking from the places that I've been healed. That's why I want you to be healed because I know how it feels to be broken. I know how it feels to be alone. I know how it feels to have all of your dreams crushed, either by circumstances that you can't control or people that you thought were in your corner and that were going after the same things as you, people that you trusted and you loved. I know what it feels like to be broken, but I also know that the story doesn't end there, that we can have these experiences of healing. And, beyond that place of being healed, there is life on the other side. And so when you come and spend these 10 minutes or so every week with me, I hope that that's what you're finding, that you're finding this place of life on the other side. Because you deserve more than just the brokenness. I believe that there is more for you than just the brokenness. And I want you to stand in that place with me right now to say, yes, regardless of what I know, there is more for me than just this place of brokenness. So I hope you'll come back next week. I'll tell you more of my story and we'll talk about where we're going to go from here, how we're going to find that place of healing, how we're going to write new chapters and see what God has for us. I can't wait to spend that time with you and to uncover it together.